It all started at a dinner. Just because there was a girl there, Sarah, my wife of 5 years, suddenly wanted a divorce. She said, "Daniel, you've been really inconsiderate. You just take my love for granted." I'm exhausted. I want a divorce. I was surprised, to say the least. Afraid she might change her mind, I signed the divorce papers right away. It was weird, though, because at that moment I started seeing these strange comments in my head. They said things like, "You're so harsh now, but you'll be begging later. Just wait. The guy's about to be crushed." The main girl is finally waking up. A man like him should just disappear. I smirked. Thinking you're important just because a man supports you isn't something to brag about. And I wasn't about to try to fix a broken marriage. When I got home, I saw Sarah sitting in the living room, looking pale and ghostly. When I turned on the lights, she was standing right in front of me. I was startled and blurted out, "Sarah, are you trying to give me a heart attack? Sitting here in the dark like that?" Even though we'd been married for 5 years, I still didn't really know how to talk to her. Every time I saw her face, I felt this uncomfortable feeling. I expected her to yell at me like she usually did, but instead she spoke calmly. "Daniel, I saw everything at the restaurant." I paused, not really caring, and started walking upstairs. "Let's talk tomorrow. I'm tired." She grabbed my sleeve, stopping me, her voice shaky. "Why, after all this time, won't you even acknowledge me?" "You'd rather fool around with those random girls, but you won't touch me. Do I mean nothing to you?" I smiled sarcastically. "Yesterday, I had dinner with friends, and some old female classmates were there. We were just reminiscing, talking about the past. What was wrong with that?" I pulled her hand off my arm and said coldly, "Why are you causing a scene? Those girls are my old high school friends, and I told you before we got married that I would never love you. It's your fault for misunderstanding. How many times do I have to tell you?" She took a step back, tears filling her eyes. "High school friends? Daniel, I've loved you for 10 years. Even a dog would be loyal to me. I told you not to get too close to other girls. I get jealous. You're only doing this because you know I love you. Do you think I can't survive without you, Sarah?" I honestly wished she'd get a dog and leave me alone. If she hadn't shamelessly gotten into my bed and pressured me with my parents, I wouldn't even acknowledge her. I don't know what she was thinking, but suddenly she let go of my hand, forcing a sad smile. "Let's get a divorce. Someone like you, cold and unfeeling, doesn't deserve my love." This wasn't the first time she'd threatened divorce. Every time we'd have a long period of silence. Then she'd come crawling back, apologizing, saying she just got too emotional. So I didn't take her seriously. I smoothly pulled the divorce papers from the drawer and handed them to her. "Sign it if you're serious. Don't go back on your word." She grabbed the papers, signed them immediately, and tossed the document on the couch. "Don't worry, I won't bother you, even if I die." I carefully put the papers away, watching her silently go back to the bedroom to pack. Before leaving, she even said, "Daniel, loving you was the biggest mistake of my life." Loving? I laughed to myself. Did she even have the right to say that? I stood by the window, watching Sarah walk away, silent for a long time. Is it finally over? I didn't feel anything about her leaving. After all, nobody forced her to marry me. It was all her own idea. "Emily, I promised you I'd take care of her. I can give her anything but love. Now she's the one leaving, so don't blame me." The next morning, before I was fully awake, the phone rang. As soon as I answered, John's annoying voice came through. "Daniel, guess who I saw last night?" Before I could answer, I felt dizzy. A screen appeared in front of me, along with a robotic voice. "Story change progress, 70%. I froze, rubbed my eyes hard, but the screen stayed. Just as I was about to touch it, comments started flooding in. Is the guy going to start being pathetic for his wife now? Ha ha ha, he deserves it for not appreciating her. Look at him, acting all righteous while using her as Emily's replacement. Wait until the second guy shows up, he probably won't even have a place to cry. What the heck? Main characters? Story change? I knew these words, but why did they seem so confusing together? That day I read 100 novels. After reading The 99th Escape of the Little Wife and CEO Stop, She's Already Married, it clicked. It turned out the world I was living in was a story from a book. In the original story, Sarah gave everything, but I was uncaring. Finally, after a series of my bad actions, she was heartbroken and got a divorce. With the help of the second male lead, she made a comeback and became a famous fashion director, loved by everyone. When I finally realized my feelings, I was at her doorstep, begging for just a look. Seeing that I was silent, John thought I was heartbroken and asked suspiciously, "Wait, did you actually fall in love with her?" I leaned back on my pillow, pinched my nose, and said annoyedly, "If you're sick, go see a doctor. Goodbye." Wait. Don't you want to know who I saw? Instead of worrying about who John saw, he should spend some time looking at the finances. Maybe he could make some money. He chuckled. "I saw Sarah. She was being held by some guy." "Is that it?" "Daniel, aren't you afraid Sarah will really leave you?" I put down the newspaper and smiled. Her legs are her own. Whether she stays or leaves, it's her choice. Hey, after all, she's loved you for years. Aren't you even a little moved? No. She's always yelling about divorce. Has she ever actually done it? I've heard those harsh words so many times I'm getting tired of it. Before long, she'll come running back. I didn't even try to hide the sarcasm in my voice. John sighed and said, "If there was a girl who loved me like that, I'd do anything for her." "Would you still like her if she killed someone you loved? She is just disgusting to me," I said, rubbing my temple, my voice cold. Back in the day, Sarah, knowing I was dating her sister, still chased after me. She had nothing better to do than follow me around, chase my car, and take pictures of me while I slept. She even filled my bedroom with cameras, and in front of her sister, she confessed to me. "Daniel, I like you. Will you be my boyfriend?" When I rejected her, she wasn't upset. Instead, she smiled brightly. "All right, I'll confess again tomorrow. One day you'll realize I'm a better match for you than she is." To prove she was more suitable for me than her sister, she somehow got a spare key to my house. Every night she'd sneak over, cook dinner, and warm my bed. One time she even snuck into my bedroom naked to give me a big surprise. I was so fed up, I considered calling the police. But Emily would always shake her head, tearfully begging me not to send her only sister to jail. "She's my sister. I promised Mom and Dad I'd take care of her." I hated that I couldn't do anything. But good people don't always get rewarded. The year we were getting married, Emily was diagnosed with stomach cancer and didn't have much time left. On her deathbed, she asked me to take care of Sarah. I wanted to refuse, but she cried, calling my name. "Daniel, I've never asked anything of you. The only thing I can't let go of is Sarah. Please, please promise me. If one day she makes a terrible mistake, please forgive her." Reluctantly, I agreed. Who would have thought Sarah would take advantage of me being drunk, get into my bed, and have reporters waiting to catch us? The scandal was huge. The Reed family, to prevent public backlash, forced me to marry the woman I hated most. Everyone said she had finally gotten what she wanted, becoming my wife. No one asked if I liked her. Hearing my lack of enthusiasm, John quickly changed the subject. "Hey, stop thinking about all that. Let's go have a drink tonight." "Sure." After hanging up, the silent screen filled with comments again. "Jerk, the harder you act now, the softer you'll be later. Just wait for the tears." The jerk is trash, mistaking a pearl for a fisheye. Emily's nothing compared to Sarah, not even a single hair. Wait until she is in another man's arms. Won't he lose his mind? I couldn't help but laugh. These people are as foolish as Sarah, probably reading so many novels that their brains have turned to mush. The progress bar on the screen suddenly lit up. Story change. Progress, 50%. The comments started flooding in again. Am I seeing things? Why did the progress go down? Does he really love her? This is just the first day. He's definitely pretending. He's probably terrified inside. Let's wait for him to beg. That evening, I drove my black Cayenne to Mai's bar. Before I even entered, I saw Sarah walking toward me, arm linked with Robert's, head held high, with a hint of defiance in her eyes. As she passed me, she coldly said, "Excuse me." The path is so wide, and she had to walk right past me, huh? I resisted the urge to roll my eyes and stepped aside. Robert glanced at me indifferently, a playful smile on his lips, then extended his hand in a clear show of dominance. "Reed, long time no see." I raised an eyebrow and ignored them, about to walk ahead, but he grabbed my arm and, in a voice only we could hear, said, "Didn't expect Sarah to have been married to you all these years and never shared a bed. Tsk-tisk, so it's you who's the problem, huh?" I looked up at Sarah in disbelief. She was a virgin? So nothing ever happened back then. I had thought I understood human nature, but I was completely played by one woman. As I stood there, dazed, comments popped up on the screen again. "Haha, serves you right. Jerk didn't cherish her, and now someone else will." "Haha, when she no longer loves the jerk, he'll realize that late feelings are worthless." Wait, doesn't the second guy's words sound odd? It's making me uncomfortable. Probably a pathetic guy. Hope he ends up with a guy like the jerk. I didn't even pay attention to those comments. Casually, I said, "So, should I thank Robert for taking out the trash for me? The air at home's much cleaner now, thanks." Sarah's beautiful face instantly turned pale. Her long nails dug into her palm. It was painful just to watch, but frankly, I didn't care. She yanked Robert away, coldly saying, "Don't talk to trash. He's not worth it." If she had been a bit more observant, she would have seen the flicker of impatience and anger on Robert's face. The so-called second male lead? Bah, hypocrite. I patted Robert's shoulder with pretended casualness and comforted him. Didn't expect Robert to end up being kept by my ex-wife. You've really lost all your dignity. Tisk tisk. Now both of them were clearly unhappy. But that's all that matters to me. I shoved my hands in my pockets and waved at them. Wish you both a lifetime of happiness. May you be locked together forever. When I arrived at John's private room, he grinned and threw his arm around my shoulder, giving me that "I understand you" look, before immediately handing me a pretty girl. I frowned, swatted his hand away, and pushed the girl out of my embrace. She seemed like she was probably out working for the first time, and flinched a little. I sat on the leather sofa, crushed the cigarette in my hand, and said, "Don't try this on me. Emily's watching from up there." The girl froze, her hands clutching her skirt anxiously. She slowly lifted her head, her eyes slightly reddened, and her beauty was breathtaking. I'm sorry." I glanced at John, who was grinning like an idiot, and felt a headache coming on. "Get lost." "Ah, don't be mad," John said, laughing as he pulled the girl to sit next to me. "I'm not interested. You can leave now." I stood up in disgust and moved to the other sofa. Her eyes were filling with tears, and her face turned pale. It was like she had made a decision and walked up to me, her steps hesitant. "Can I stay in the corner? I won't disturb you." "If I don't stay long enough, my supervisor will cut my pay." "I promise I won't make a sound. I'll just stay in the corner." I was a little lost in thought, and my mind wandered back to when I first met Emily. She was so small and frail from malnutrition, only her big eyes stood out. So beautiful. She and Sarah were switched at birth, the fake and the real heiress. After Sarah went back to the Shaw family, Emily should have returned to her biological parents. But to her surprise, all her relatives were gone. The Shaw family allowed her to stay, treating her like their own. Yet when Sarah bullied her, they turned a blind eye. Because she had lived a life that wasn't hers, Sarah's anger was directed at her. In the dead of winter, Emily wore a thin dress, kneeling in the snow. Her exposed arms were covered in a mass of scars, old and new, a painful sight. When she saw me, she quickly averted her gaze, her fists clenched in anxiety. It made one instinctively want to protect her. "Fine, you can stay in the corner," I relented, my heart softening. "Thank you." The girl smiled through her tears, happily going to sit in the corner. John set up a card game, with chips and cards scattered across the table. My luck was terrible that night, and I lost 18 rounds in a row. Frustrated, I leaned back and glanced at the girl in the corner. My voice was a bit hoarse as I spoke. "Hey, draw a card for me. If you win, it's yours." She looked up at me, hesitating and unsure. "Me?" I nodded. "If you lose, it still counts as mine." She seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and cautiously drew a card, handing it to me. I was about to open the card when the door to the room suddenly opened. "Daniel, I just saw Sarah in—" "Spit it out quickly. Can't you see I'm busy?" I focused on the cards in my hand. What should I play? "I saw Sarah kissing Robert at the bar. They were all over each other. Aren't you going to take a look?" The room immediately fell into a dead silence. Everyone held their breath, and the mood grew tense. Although I didn't like Sarah, I was still known as a player in the dating scene, but I always gave her face. I never publicly said anything bad about her. We each played our own games, and when necessary, we pretended to be the loving couple. But now, to be suddenly cheated on, everyone was waiting for my reaction. Even the once quiet comments on the screen began to scroll furiously. "He's here! He's here! The classic scene is coming our way." "Oh man, we're about to witness the two guys fighting over one girl scene. Huh, late love is more pathetic than cheap grass. He is about to beg her not to leave him." I scoffed and didn't respond, continuing to look at my cards. Maybe I was silent for too long because John couldn't help but pat me on the shoulder. "Why not go out and check? Who knows? Maybe—" Maybe what? Reconcile? Don't even think about it. It had been so hard to get rid of her, and now he wanted me to go back? Not a chance. I patted the girl on the shoulder and laughed, scolding, "Stop looking at them, look at your cards." "It's our turn to play." She hesitated, nervously drawing a card, glancing at me. When I nodded, she placed the card on the table. The comments on the screen quickly started scrolling again. Why is he still sitting there? Shouldn't he be thinking about how good she is? He's probably just pretending to be strong, but deep down he's already planning to apologize. I wasn't sure if I was the only one who could see this weird stuff, so I tentatively asked John, "Can you see all this strange text?" He looked at me with a puzzled expression, as if to ask, "Are you stupid?" Well, I guess it's only me who can see it. The progress bar on the screen didn't change, as if waiting for me to see that scene and regret it. Curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up the card, calmly saying, "I'm going to go to the restroom." John laughed, "Still pretending like you don't care, just saving face, huh?" I rolled my eyes at him and walked out. As soon as I left the private room, I saw Sarah hurrying towards the restroom. I was about to call out to her when I heard Robert's voice coming from the next room, talking to his friends. "Robert, you really like Sarah? She's been with Daniel for so many years. You'd be better off finding someone cleaner." "Tuh, you don't know. She's still a virgin. But in bed, she's really passionate. When she wears a tight skirt, it's just irresistible." I like her, but it still bothers me that she lived with my rival for 5 or 6 years. Through the crack in the door, I saw Robert take a deep drag on his cigarette, a look of reluctance in his eyes. Is this what the devoted second male lead looks like in novels? Just as I thought the screen comments would start flooding in again, everything was eerily silent. "What are you doing here?" I was about to leave when a cold voice came from behind me. I felt a little awkward since I had overheard things I wasn't supposed to hear, but I quickly regained my composure. She frowned, lifted her head high, and walked towards us with large strides, her tone unusually cold. "I'm no longer your wife. Please show some respect." With that, she tried to push open the door to enter. I grabbed her wrist, sneering at her. "Sarah, don't think so highly of men, especially in our circle. Don't come running to us like some stray dog, not even knowing the difference." I wasn't sure if I imagined it, but just as the words left my mouth, the corner of her lips curled up ever so slightly, almost like a fleeting smile. She immediately slapped my hand away. "Ow," I muttered under my breath. That really stung. She spoke, her voice laced with disdain. "Are you talking about yourself? Robert isn't as cold-blooded as you. It was my stupidity that made me choose the wrong person. So even if you begged me, I wouldn't get back with you. Let go." I silently let go of her wrist and gave a faint smile. She shot me a smug look and elegantly pushed open the door, entering the private room. I stood there like a statue, not moving, until John nudged me, snapping me out of my trance. Cold sweat had already soaked my back, and my gaze was fixed on the door. I couldn't quite describe what I had just done. The disgust in my heart was overwhelming. "My bro understands you. Don't be upset. Let's go grab a drink." In front of me, the progress bar on the screen started to rise. "Chasing wife progress, 60%, 80%. And finally stopped at 90%. Ha ha ha. She is so cool, the jerk deserves it. Now he knows what it's like to be heartbroken. When the progress bar hits 100%, she will inherit his billion-dollar fortune and live a perfect, shameless life with the second male lead." I clenched my fists. Why was my ending so casually brushed aside? Who Sarah liked was none of my business. But if she thought she could step on me, using me as a stepping stone for her own happiness, she could forget it. My fate would only be in my hands. I don't know if it was my thoughts that influenced it, but the progress bar suddenly dropped, followed by a shrill mechanical sound. "Warning, warning, plot reversal progress abnormal, plot reversal progress abnormal, progress 60%, progress 30%. Suddenly, Sarah ran out of the room shouting my name, "Daniel!" I turned to look at her, a flash of hatred in my eyes. Just then, a flood of fragmented memories came rushing back. After the plot reversal process was completed, I disregarded my parents' objections and resolutely gave Sarah the billion-dollar fortune. Then, I left alone, going abroad to heal my broken heart, not even caring about my parents. My parents turned gray overnight because of my rashness. We never saw each other again before they died. I became a puppet, a backdrop for her journey to the top, and in the end, I remained single for her. It was pathetic, really pathetic. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but slap myself. How foolish to live and die for a woman I didn't love. There's no such thing as a plot reversal. It's just the delusions of those who love but cannot have. To shake myself awake, Sarah loudly declared, "I hope you don't disturb my life from now on." Robert proudly wrapped his arm around her waist, raising an eyebrow as he looked at me. "Sarah's mine now, Reed. Show some respect." The screen comments exploded with a flurry of messages, blocking the entire page. At that moment, a graceful figure appeared before me. An idea suddenly struck me. I grabbed her waist and whispered, "Help me out." The girl looked up in confusion, but when she saw it was me, She nodded and obediently stood by my side. My girlfriend. I looked Robert straight in the eye, mocking him. My girlfriend is so beautiful. Do you really think I would be interested in the so-called old virgin you're talking about? I emphasized the words old virgin clearly. Sarah's face darkened, her eyes suddenly red. She sounded a bit aggrieved. We just broke up a few days ago and you've already found someone new. I really don't mean anything to you. I never said I loved you. From the beginning to the end, you were the one deluding yourself. And how cheap is your love that you could sleep with someone else just 2 days after our divorce? Sarah, are you really that starved for love? Sarah laughed through her tears, staring at me with eyes full of sorrow. Yes, I'm pathetic. I thought one day you would love me. I had plastic surgery to look like your sister. I gave up everything for you. What's so different about me from that Emily? The slap came before anyone could react. Sarah's soft skin instantly swelled up with a red mark. I coldly scolded her. Don't mention Emily. You're not worthy. Before marrying me, I told you countless times not to bring up feelings, not to get into my bed and force me to break up with your sister. Your love disgusts me. Furious, she shook with rage, raising her hand to hit me. But I grabbed her wrist. I don't hit girls, but there are exceptions. With that, I let go of her hand and walked back into the room without looking back. She screamed hysterically, Daniel, I don't love you anymore. I will never love a jerk like you. I paused for a moment, but didn't turn around. Love? That word had long since disappeared with Emily's death. I stepped out of the bar, and a chill wind hit me. It felt cold. I pulled my coat tighter around me and looked up at the distant fireworks. The pitch-black sky suddenly lit up, and in the far distance, there was a couple embracing and kissing, their smiles dazzling and beautiful beyond words. Robert carefully wiped away the tears from Sarah's eyes. I don't know what he said, but suddenly Sarah's eyes seemed to brighten. When she caught my gaze, it seemed like a form of retaliation. She stood on tiptoe and kissed Robert on the lips. Boring. I sniffled, my nose turning red from the cold, then turned my gaze away and staggered forward. I tripped slightly, almost falling flat on my face. Just when I thought I was going to crash to the ground, a pair of soft, fair hands caught me. Mr. Reed, are you all right? For a moment, I thought I saw Emily, the woman who had lived in my heart for a lifetime. What's your name? I've had a drink and can't drive. Could you take me to Red Maple Resort? I twirled the car keys in my hand, my eyes falling on the woman. She lowered her head slightly, biting her lower lip. She took the keys from my hand and turned to get into the car. My name is Lisa, like the star in the sky. I smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. Lisa drove me to Red Maple Resort. When we arrived, she opened the car door for me with great respect. I looked at the information about Lisa on my phone, and an idea began to form in my mind. I gave a careless smile. Lisa, would you be interested in making a deal with me? I saw a flash of surprise in Lisa's eyes. That night, Lisa became my girlfriend. We agreed that she would pretend to be my girlfriend, and I would pay her accordingly. I wanted to see if Sarah would still be able to laugh in the end. I gave Lisa houses, cars, and jewelry, making the show of it grand and extravagant. Even John, who had always been on good terms with me, couldn't hold back. Why don't you just go and get her back? There's no need to do all this. I was puzzled, my face full of confusion. Get who back? Sarah, of course? Isn't all of this just to make her change her mind? You're thinking too much. I lowered my head, continuing with my work. Stop working. Do you know? Oh, forget it. John paced around the office, looking anxious, like he had something to say but didn't know how to put it into words. I was getting annoyed with him and closed my laptop, then looked at him with a heavy gaze. Just say it. What's going on?" He plopped down next to me and rambled, "Sarah's going to get engaged to Robert. Aren't you upset about that?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Why should I be upset?" Well, Sarah has been with you for so many years." He stumbled, trying to find the right words, but only managing to mumble something like that. "Forget it. Just don't regret it later." With that, he didn't wait for my response and rushed out of the office. I stared at the direction in which John left, lost in thought. That line, "Don't regret it later," I must have heard it more than 20 times. Sarah's best friend even called me, scolding me harshly and saying that I was a cheater and a jerk. She told me I would regret it in the future. It seemed like everyone wanted me to come to my senses and kept urging me to get Sarah back, but is that necessary? I didn't love Sarah. I married her because she shamelessly got into my bed and put pressure on my parents. We had agreed before marriage to have our own space. She was the one who deluded herself, thinking that time would make me fall in love with her. When she asked for a divorce, I thought it was just because she had lost hope and finally came to her senses. Little did I know it was just to complete her mission. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows in my company's office, looking down at the endless stream of cars and people below. So small, yet so real. Perhaps in the eyes of those watching the screen comments, I was just an expendable character. But to me, what I saw was the real world. Several days passed, and I didn't hear any news of Sarah's wedding. Instead, I was bombarded with the news of her car accident. At first, it had nothing to do with me, but my mother kept urging me to go to the hospital to see her. "Daniel, I know you don't like Sarah, but for the sake of how much she loved you for all these years, go and see her." My mother's voice was choked with emotion. Maybe she thought of her younger self, which is why she was so especially fond of Sarah. When she was young, my mother loved my father to the point of madness, to the extent that it could be called being a fool. When my father was staying with other women, she would rush to deliver contraception. Like Sarah, she always believed that if she gave enough, she would get something in return. She always used to say to me, "If it weren't for you, I would have divorced your father long ago." As a child, I felt guilty, thinking that I had burdened my mother. If it weren't for me, she would have lived a happy life. This guilt lasted until I grew up. When I finally had the ability to protect my mother, I urged her to divorce my father, but she stubbornly refused. Instead, she pressured me to marry a woman I didn't love. "Mom, you know I don't like her. I find even looking at her disgusting. Why do you have to force me?" I said, pinching the bridge of my nose in exhaustion. I don't know what I said that hurt my mother's feelings, but she suddenly screamed at me hysterically. "You're just like your father, heartless. If you don't go, I'll die in front of you." Okay, I'll go. Is that enough?" When I arrived at the hospital and walked toward Sarah's room, I was thinking about how to make Sarah stop bothering my mother. The barrage of comments on the screen appeared again. "Is it finally time for the plot twist? This jerk is really heartless, only rushing to care after she gets hurt. Too bad. Our girl has already fallen for the second guy. The jerk is just waiting to cry now." Not all the comments were hoping for me to chase after Sarah. A very small number of them were normal. Am I the only one who feels sorry for him? Married to someone he doesn't love, just thinking about it feels exhausting. But these comments barely caused a stir. I stopped in front of Sarah's hospital room, took a deep breath, and slowly pushed the door open. She wasn't surprised at all. Instead, she seemed to have expected me. "What are you here for?" "I came to see if you're dead yet. It's been less than a month since our divorce, and I don't want to carry the reputation of being the guy who killed his ex-wife." Her eyes suddenly turned red, and tears uncontrollably slid down her face. It was beautiful, but it disgusted me, because Emily would never have shown such a pitiful look to gain sympathy. Sarah clutched the blanket with her pale fingers and desperately asked, "Daniel, have you never loved me? Not even a little bit?" Looking at the hope in her eyes, I mercilessly shattered her fantasy. No, who would love a stalker and a voyeur? I still felt chills down my spine thinking about the cameras she had installed everywhere. But I've changed. I even gave up the pride of being a rich girl and went into the kitchen to cook the dishes you like. Before she could finish, I couldn't help but laugh. So, did I beg you to cook for me? This isn't about you being a martyr, pushing yourself to marry me. We've already signed the divorce agreement, and you're about to get engaged. Can't you stop coming up with these annoying tricks to bother me? It seemed like she'd caught on to something, her red eyes tightly gripping my sleeve. If I say I regret it, can we get back together? Daniel, I really can't live without you. Her tears fell as if there was no cost to them, large drops falling endlessly. The barrage of comments came back. What the hell? Why did the progress bar drop to 10%? Didn't it say it would make him suffer? Also, why is she grabbing onto his sleeve like this? Shouldn't she slap him and tell him she doesn't love him anymore? What a pile of crap! I'm done watching. For a moment, Sarah's face went pale, and she stared at me in a flurry. It seemed like she could also see the comments. I coldly pried her fingers off my sleeve, one by one. Don't even think about it. Sarah, you're an adult. No one is holding a knife to your neck to force you to make a choice. Don't try to play the victim and then build a pedestal for yourself. Your love and everything you've done makes me feel sick. I then looked at the man standing outside the door. Come in. Looks like she doesn't love you as much as she says. Sarah panicked. She didn't even bother to remove the needle from her hand and fell off the bed. The IV bottle crashed to the floor, spilling the liquid everywhere, and big glaring drops of blood oozed from the wound. The scene was both messy and somewhat amusing. Robert, don't listen to him. I love you, really. Please believe me. Robert remained unmoved, looking down at her from a higher position. Just when Sarah thought he might soften, Robert's voice was dripping with sarcasm. You were so pure and aloof when we first met. I didn't expect you'd end up crawling on the floor like a dog, begging me not to leave. Ha ha ha. You don't really think I fell in love with you, do you? If you weren't Daniel's woman, I wouldn't even bother to look at you. His laughter was like a sharp knife being plunged into Sarah's heart, dripping with fresh blood. I couldn't help but laugh at the sight of them fighting like dogs. Sarah thought she was controlling the man, but in reality, she was the prey. I gracefully turned and left. The barrage of comments kept flashing across the screen. The screen froze into a pixelated blur. Behind me, I could hear the sound of the two of them arguing. Jerk! Old virgin, coward, bastard child. Such words kept appearing. The people who had once been closest to each other knew exactly how to hurt each other the most. The next time I saw Sarah was at my wedding. She wasn't standing next to Robert, nor with any of the men whose names had appeared in the comments. Through the crowd, I could vaguely see that her eyes were a little red, and tears seemed to be on the verge of falling at any moment. I'm not sure what someone had said to the man standing beside her, but the next second, he slapped her so hard that she was knocked to the ground, with blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. The man was furious, pointing at her nose and berating her. It seemed like she was embarrassed, so she ran off, crying. Daniel, what are you looking at? So engrossed? Lisa came over with concern. I casually replied, I just saw my ex-wife. She gave a faint, oh, then put on a proper smile and went to toast the guests. I thought it was just a small interruption, but I never expected Sarah to stir up such trouble. On the way back to the villa, she suddenly threw herself in front of my car, arms outstretched. If I hadn't braked in time, she would have been nothing but a pile of crushed bones. I felt anger rising in my chest, slammed the car door open and marched over to her. If you want to die, get the hell out of the way. Don't die under my car. That would be bad luck. She seemed to ignore me completely, throwing herself at my waist and crying uncontrollably. Daniel, I regret it. I know you still love me, don't you? Otherwise, why would you have stopped? Is she stupid? Even if I hit someone and killed them, I'd be held legally responsible. Doesn't she get that? Clearly, she didn't. I don't need any title. I'll be with you. Don't leave me, please. She clung tightly to my suit like a parasitic weed sucking blood from its host. I couldn't take it anymore, and pushed her away with force. God damn it, stay the hell away from me. But to my surprise, she sprinted over to Lisa, laughing lowly. Lisa, do you really think he loves you? Lisa glanced at her coldly, but didn't speak. Sarah, in tears, pointed at her own haggard face, hysterically saying, Look at me. I look so much like my sister. He doesn't love me, so what about you, with only partial resemblance? Ha ha ha. Besides that, Emily, he doesn't love anyone. Her eyes grew redder with each word, now crying, now laughing, as though she had lost her mind. Lisa couldn't help but roll her eyes. Who said I want his love? He's powerful, and in his heart there's a first love, but so what? As the saying goes, a woman's 3 great happinesses are: her husband doesn't come home, her husband has money, and her husband doesn't come home, but gives her a large amount of money. Sarah, you're still too young. After speaking, she didn't bother to look at Sarah's expression and directly grabbed my hand, pulling me into the car. In the darkness, only Sarah sat there, slumped, lost in deep self-doubt. I'm the female lead, so why doesn't anyone love me anymore? Inside the car, I gave Lisa a thumbs up. Well done. Lisa, a little timid, flashed a flattering smile at me. Mr. Reed, since that went so well, can I get a little extra allowance? Add it. I waved my hand grandly and added a large sum to her account. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Lisa was so excited she nearly jumped up. The whole story change, the comments, the supposed plot. It was all nonsense. Sarah's attempts to manipulate me, to play the victim, to force some kind of dramatic reconciliation, it all failed. She was left alone, defeated, not because of some preordained narrative, but because her actions were based on delusion and a desperate need for validation that no one, especially not me, was obligated to give her. I had moved on, not into the arms of a replacement, but into a life of my own choosing, free from her manufactured drama. And that, I realized, was the real ending, or rather the real beginning.